Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
And I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
Today we are reading John chapter 13, verses 1 through 17, the story of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples as they head into the day before Passover. The story is just steeped in relationship. Jesus' relationship to God as he prepares to return to God, and Jesus' deep connection to the people who are here with him on earth. How do these things fit together? Why does Jesus' awareness of the power he derives from his relationship to God cause him to disrobe and don a towel and wash the feet of his students? Is this about cleansing or hospitality? How can it prepare them for what is to come? Thanks for being with us. Hey, Bobby, it is good to see you.
Hey, Amy, how are you this week?
I'm fantastic because I found the most amazing buried time capsule of treasure yesterday.
I'm so curious.
Bobby Williamson, this is your life. No, 17 years ago, you filled out you look so terrified.
I know, I was trying to do the math about what was 17 years ago and where was I?
Of like 25 things about me on Facebook.
Oh, no. Yeah, when they were trying to mine our data, but we hadn't caught on yet to what they were doing.
Yes,
yeah,
they were mining our data and we were fools. We didn't know that that's what was happening yet. So,
yeah. You're going to read some of them to me, aren't you?
I have to read you at least one of them because it's important that you remember this and that other people learn this about you. You did not have children. Your children are not this old.
Yeah.
However, you really loved being an uncle.
Oh, yeah. I still love being an uncle.
And for a while, you had convinced your niece and nephew that you were your own twin brother,
Mortimer.
Uncle Mortimer.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
That's just so good, Bobby. Like, that's just so creative. I mean, even down to the name Mortimer.
Yeah.
Where did you
I don't know where Uncle
idea?
Mortimer came from. Like, I don't know where the name Mortimer came from, but the way that it worked was I had my own twin brother, but Uncle Bobby did not know that he had a twin brother, but Uncle Mortimer did know that they were twins. And so Uncle Mortimer, I think he lived like under the mattress or something. Like there's some way. So sometimes he would show up and just be like, they'd be like, Uncle Bobby. And I'd be like, I'm Uncle Mortimer. And then we'd have this whole thing. And then later they'd be like, Uncle Mortimer. And I'd be like, what are y'all talking about? Who is Uncle Mortimer? Because I was Uncle Bobby. And so it was this whole thing. And one year he even gave them presents for Christmas.
Wow.
Then I decided like that gets expensive because you got to do twice as many presents.
Yeah. You got to rein that in.
It went on for a number of years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The way that it started, I don't think I've ever told them this, is that they're like in their 20s now, is that they were really irritating me one day. And so I wasn't responding to them. And then they're like, Uncle Bobby, Uncle Bobby, Uncle Bobby. And then I felt bad about just ignoring them. So I was like, why do you keep calling me Uncle Bobby? I'm Uncle Mortimer. And so that's how it started. And then I just had to I kept the fiction up for like 5 years or something.
Oh, man. I just feel like those moments where you can flip your irritation into a funny story that you're then going to ride for 5 years.
Yeah.
Let that be an inspiration to all of us who engage. I was going to say engage with young children, but really engage with anyone
people
who's a little annoying.
Yeah.
That maybe we can make it funny instead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle
Great.
Mortimer. Those were good times.
Those were the days. Bobby, this week we are in John chapter 13, And we begin at the beginning of this chapter, and that's not so far in terms of length of
Yeah,
prose
we're just
that
one
we've
chapter
skipped
away,
over.
basically.
One chapter that we've skipped over and change. But it's an important, things have shifted in the narrative in important ways.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can ground us a little bit before we start chapter 13.
So you will remember that when we had the last story, Jesus was headed into Judea. He stopped in Bethany to raise Lazarus and was on his way to Jerusalem. And so in chapter 12, which we skipped, that is the story of Jesus' triumphal arrival in Jerusalem at the beginning of the week before he's going to be crucified. And so we are now in the last week of Jesus' life. And in fact, on this reading today begins John's version of Jesus' final supper with his disciples. So we are in this moment beginning the conversation Jesus has with his disciples the night before he's crucified. It's sort of strange time-wise because we're still a good month or so from Palm Sunday and Easter. But this is the setting in which we find ourselves, is the night before Jesus' crucifixion. He's meeting for the last time with his disciples. It happens somewhat differently in John than it does in the Synoptics. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, this is like the Passover meal, and Jesus breaks the bread and the wine and institutes Holy Communion and all of these kinds of things. In John's gospel, this is the night before Passover. So we're still 24 hours away from the Passover meal. And this is not a Passover meal that he's celebrating, but it is his final supper with the disciples. And in John's gospel, this meal goes on from chapter 13 all the way through chapter 17. It's almost a fourth of the gospel is what Jesus says to his disciples on the night before his crucifixion. We're just going to get a little bit of it here in John 13. And then next time we go to the events of Good Friday, which will carry us all the way to Easter.
It's a pretty wild pacing, but I guess life does feel like that sometimes. Like there are just these times that everything slows down.
That's right.
So we've moved into one of those times.
We have. We will come back to the story of Palm Sunday on Palm Sunday in a few weeks. Mm-hmm. At least for part of that conversation will be in Palm Sunday. So we are not done with that, but it is important as we read these chapters to think this is Jesus telling the disciples the things he needs to tell them before the crucifixion.
Well, should we dive in? Are we ready?
Let's do.
Okay. Our reading today is John chapter 13, verses 1 through 17, and I am reading from the NRSV. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. Well, I'm really glad that you gave us that sort of introduction, because my first question was sort of before the festival of Passover, like, how close are we to the
Right.
Before can mean a lot of things.
Right.
But you've already placed us in time somewhat, which I appreciate.
Yes. The events of Good Friday in this gospel take place on the day of preparation. And so, as you well know, the Jewish accounting of days begins at sunset and ends at sunset. And so this meal is the very beginning of the day of preparation for Passover. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this doesn't help anybody except the Jews who may be listening, but it's like Erev, like the night before the evening beginning of the holiday.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Bobby, this, it's still part of the first verse, I guess the second part of the first verse here. Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. I mean, first, I'm interested, although John doesn't tell us too much about what it would feel like to hold that knowledge. I don't know that that's an answerable question, but I'm going to append something else onto it so you can speak to it or not. I was really interested in the description of what is to come, like the way they talk about it here. Like it could have said, Jesus knew that his hour had come to sacrifice his life for the sake of whatever.
Right.
Or Jesus knew that the dawning of a different, you could use a lot of language to describe what is about to transpire.
I love that. Yeah.
And this is the language that John chooses. And I wonder what you think of the language John chose.
I love the way you have asked that question, Amy, because it really does emphasize relationality. And we're going to see that this text is all about relationship. And so to begin with, this is a return to the Father, which is sort of it's a homecoming. Like you get the sense that, Jesus, who was the Word, who was with the Father in the beginning, became flesh and dwelt among us, and now is going to return. And so there's this sense of like going back in a way to where you belong. But I do think there's also a sense of loss. It's like when we go and visit my in-laws, who are very sentimental people in the dearest way, and we're going to come home. Like there is a sense of like we're going back to where we belong. We're going to be in our place with our people. But there's also this sense of loss. Yeah. And there's a lot of crying in the driveway and getting in and out of the car and hugging. And so there is this sense of like going back to be with the Father is going back to be where Jesus belongs. But also it's a leaving of the disciples who have also become really relationally important to him.
I love that language so much, Bobby. As I was reading it, I was like, it just feels so sort of human and warm. It's not like an abstract theological thing. It's not frightening.
Yeah.
Even though what is about to transpire is frightening.
It is very frightening, but you're right. It's very circumspect about the way in which he's going to return.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so relational. And then that ties us so beautifully into this next statement. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end.
Yeah.
And that really, that just draws out that sense of longing to be in both places, longing for both. And so awareness that returning to one is moving away from the other.
Yes. That phrasing of love them to the end in Greek is eis telos. And so telos can have a temporal sense, like until things have finished, but it can also have a sense of completeness or perfection. And so the CEB gives the translation, he loved them fully, which is trying to capture that sense of telos, like completeness. And the NRSV to the end, I think, gives you a little more of a sense of he loves them all the way up until the moment of his death or something like that.
Yeah.
And probably the Greek is trying to capture both of those senses. His full love is expressed for them and the love he has all the way until his crucifixion.
Oh,
it's a really rich phrase. Just that.
That is just gorgeous. I wish there were an easy way in English to capture that, because the combination of those two translations does give you the sense of there is a kind of ending happening now, and there is a temptation before those kinds of endings to pull back a little bit so that it's not as painful to have distance. And this is saying that didn't happen. There was no pulling back. But also, when you say sort of love them fully, it sounds to me like I'm attaching it to different Hebrew words in my head, but there's this sense of almost it's complete. Like
Yes.
nothing, in a way, nothing bad is happening here.
Right.
Like that love has flourished in exactly the way that it
That's right.
should.
That's beautiful.
Nothing's
Yeah.
being like cut off
Yeah.
where it shouldn't be.
That's right, Amy. That's so lovely. The other thing that is occurring to me here is this phrasing in the beginning, Jesus knew that his hour had come, and it's Passover, especially the way we've been reading fairly quickly through the Gospel of John, clicks that Passover 2 years ago in the Gospel accounting when Jesus at Passover, or right around the time of Passover, went to that wedding, and his mother wanted him to do this act of hospitality.
Yeah.
And he said,
he's
my
like, "It's
hour
not."
has not yet come. Now
Yeah.
his hour has come. And so we're kind of, I think, meant to connect across that time and think about the hospitality of the wedding and the hospitality of this meal, and like how those two might interplay with each other.
I love that. I think that maybe you have sort of answered this question indirectly, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When the text says, having loved his own who were in the world, who is that? I mean, we read just last week about his sort of very like deep and intimate and sort of emotional connection to Mary and Martha and Lazarus. He has his disciples who are with him now. Then he has all these followers that, Jesus so loved the world. Like Jesus loves a lot of people.
Yeah.
How do you read this? Who's he loving?
I think the way that I read that is actually starting where you ended with God so loved the world.
Yeah.
And the light was the life for all people. That there is a sense in which his own is possibly inclusive of all. But we also saw a few weeks ago in the story of Nicodemus, in that for God so loved the world passage, that there is a separating that actually does take place, which is people who either choose to or are not able to step into the light or receive the gift or something like that. And, this like loved his own implies that there are some who are not his. And so I wonder if there is that kind of sense of self-sifting maybe is the way that some people who have not quite fully been able to move into the sort of kingdom of heaven, into the light that he's offered.
But you see it in that sort of bigger scale, on a larger scale, not just talking about the people that he has like a really personal relationship with.
That's the way I see it. I think in this story, he's in the room with this special group of people. And so they are probably in the first instance who he has loved. But I think that group is bigger. And those who imagine themselves or understand themselves to be followers of Jesus, reading this gospel or even now might see themselves sort of connected in. Like that group represents the larger, more inclusive group. How did you read that, loved his own?
I mean, maybe I tried to read it as almost like pointing both ways, because there's so much sort of like physicality and intimacy and like just sort of like human closeness. In the last story, we read the Lazarus story, and in this story that I don't want to lose that element of it, but I do think that it also points to this bigger. I think it's pulling in both directions.
I think that's right.
And then we have this little note that introduces the devil.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add to that? I mean, it's so matter of fact. I don't really, okay, the devil did that.
I mean, it is interesting in the various Gospels' depictions of Judas and why he does what he does. This one, John, seems to be the most direct about, like, the devil was up to something. and provoked Judas in some kind of way. So you get the sense that there is this sort of cosmic scale that is involved, and maybe the cosmic scale is what is primary and not simply Judas has some kind of theological or political difference with Jesus, although that might also be true. But that there is a cosmic force that is exploiting that difference in some kind of way. One thing that commentators point out is that the Greek is actually unclear about whose heart it is. How did the NRSV read it?
The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas.
Yeah, the Greek actually just says the devil had already put it in his heart. And so there is a conversation in the scholarship about whether the his in there is that the devil has like seeded it in Judas's heart.
Or if it's in the devil's heart?
Or if the devil has already made a decision internal to himself.
Interesting.
But Judas does not yet know or has not yet been recruited into this cause. And different scholars settle that different ways.
It's fascinating the different levels on which the plot to execute Jesus is playing out. You know, like there are the religious authorities, but then there's the religious authorities, I think, probably rightful fear of the authorities that govern over them, the empire. And then we also have here like the devil.
Right.
And then we also certainly could talk about like God's plan for this whole thing and the way things needed to play out. There's just a lot of things lining up. Okay. I'm proud of myself for not laughing while I was reading verses 3 and 4, because every time I've read them in preparation, I have laughed a little bit that Jesus sort of recognizing like really that he had quite a lot of power. God had given everything into his hands. He'd come from God. He's going to God. So he gets up from the table, takes off his clothes, and puts on a towel.
Yeah.
I just like, I don't know.
Can you talk more about why that makes you laugh? I think it's so interesting. I think you're onto something really important.
No, I think there is the text is not suggesting this, but I think there's a way to read this that's like, I'm so powerful that I'm not going to wear clothes anymore. Like I reject the societal expectation of whatnot. I'm very curious to hear how you understand the causal relationship between those clauses.
Yeah.
Jesus had this recognition of his very close connection to God.
Yeah.
And so he took off his robe and put on a towel.
I mean, I think what you're onto is exactly right. And I do think this text is giving us a ludicrous image that makes zero sense in the cultural context, to which Peter is going to respond a little bit later in the text.
Yeah.
I don't think the text is thinking about like, I'm so powerful, I can do whatever I want. But I do think it is like, when you read that verse 3, God has given everything into his hands. He came from God, was returning to God. Like he is the pinnacle of humans who is almost God and is God. And so what's he going to do with that power? And then here he is putting himself, I mean, what he's doing is putting himself in the position of a household slave.
Right.
And so he has chosen to shed, like he could have put on purple robes and a crown and been like, I'm more powerful than you. And instead he takes on the attire of the lowest person in the room, basically.
Yeah, it is a sort of inversion of expectations, not in that, same kind of comical way that I was suggesting, but it's a very crazy thing to picture. It's hard because like the title is that there's like a little, title on the passage that says, whatever, Jesus washes his disciples' feet. So you kind of know what's going to happen. But if you don't know what's going to happen, that's a really crazy thing to do.
That's so helpful, Amy, because I think the title's there. And then also like this story, I've been reading this story my whole life. And so at some point you're just like, Jesus, humbles himself and washes feet. And you lose that sense. So I appreciate you bringing us back. And And especially that verse, like I had not really connected that verse 3 and verse 4 in my own mind. Like what it is exactly doing is establishing the great power of Jesus and then flipping it on its head. And it is a shocking, ludicrous, slightly absurd image that maybe should make you laugh or at least like be shocked by it.
It's a very strange
thing
to do. This detail that the towel that he uses to dry the disciples' feet is tied around him, like is wrapped around his body. It just seemed like strange to me. Like, why don't you get another towel? Or what? I don't know. And I wondered if there's a particular kind of like intimacy or sort of like lowliness of using a towel that is on your own body, or I don't know. Do you make anything of that particular?
I had not made anything of that, Amy. Now that you're kind of leading me down that path a little bit, I think there's some really interesting connections that you can make. I'm curious did you sort of settle on?
I mean, this whole story made me think of a story in chapter 12 that we haven't read yet this season, but is it Mary or Martha who?
It's Mary,
It's Mary who, and she's not washing Jesus's feet, she's anointing Jesus's feet. But there's this very, the image of her drying it with her hair.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like that, this whole story sort of coming right somewhat off the heels of that story made me wonder if there's some kind of, they're not the same, but if there was something in that experience for Jesus that was like, oh, this is what I should do for my disciples.
Like almost he learned from her a little bit or is modeling himself on her a little bit.
I mean, that is a question in my mind. Yes.
I like that.
If he just had that experience and it was clearly very meaningful to him, what would it be? And it was so like enormously honoring to him.
Yeah.
What would it be then for him to put himself in the position that she put herself in for his disciples?
I love that reading, Amy. So, Jesus is going to invite his followers to serve one another in this kind of a way.
Yeah.
And so there is a sense in which this is a model for how Jesus followers should be. And I really like that idea, either that Mary kind of got it before she had been instructed that way, like she just naturally understands, or where you're pressing us a little bit, where maybe Jesus has seen this as a way of demonstrating, like he's learned this from her in some kind of way, like, oh, that's what that is like. I really love that. I do think that the sense of like using the towel that you're wearing, like I don't really know deep enough detail about how foot washing would have taken place,
happened.
whether this is normal or not. But like, to me, it would feel different if I washed somebody's feet and then dabbed them off with a towel that, had been on the floor or was like slung over my shoulder. But the towel that I'm wearing, that does feel more personal and a little more like, I don't know, like demeaning's not exactly the word I mean. Like I can't quite land it, but it is like there's a humility about it.
There's a profound humility in it.
Yeah. In a way that just using a towel, like objectively as a third object, doesn't have quite the same feel to it.
Yeah. No, I think that's right.
Amy, one of the things that I really love in this text is, foot washing was a totally normal thing to do in the first century context. And we're at foot washing at a meal. This, I think, is like when somebody comes over to your house and you offer them like hors d'oeuvres or something, or you say, would you like to wash up? This is like a thing that a host does for the guests, is to say, you've come and now I'm offering you this hospitality. And so in a sense, Jesus is hosting this meal by saying, before we dine, you all need to freshen up. And so I'm offering that to you. But then in the first century context, of course, it wouldn't have been the host who actually did the foot washing. It either would have been the guests would have washed their own feet, or in a more substantial context, like a wealthier context, then the household slave would have washed the feet. And so the host would say, I offer you a foot washing. And then the slave would have done it. And so Jesus is doing this really interesting thing. It's not just that he's taken on a role of humility, although he is doing that, but it's that he is functioning as the host and the servant at the same time. He is both the most important person in the room who is hosting this meal, and he's also the least important person in the room who is wiping the feet with a towel around his waist. And so there is a real destabilizing of the social relationships in the room, like compared to what you would expect at a meal. He's taking totally normal things that you would have done at a meal, and he's inverting them in all these ways that you're noticing.
I love that. No, you're right. I mean, I was trying to think earlier today, like what is foot, like to think about foot washing, because like it's like we have shoes now. It's a different it's a different world. We're trying to really place ourselves in that world, in that ritual, the way it existed fairly normally.
Yeah.
And then to see the difference in terms of what's happening here, I think is really important.
Hi, I'm Terry Peterson, minister of St. John's Church of Scotland in Gourock, west of Glasgow on the Scottish coast. And I am the liturgy writer for Bible Worm, which means I get to spend a lot of time listening to Bobby and Amy, and that is a great joy. It is fascinating to hear them read and talk through stories I thought I knew pretty well, since I'm starting my third time through the narrative lectionary now. I always come away with more ideas than I can fit into a liturgy or a sermon, and working with them has deepened my own spiritual life as I write liturgy that follows the contours of their conversations. I appreciate that they don't shy away from the difficult parts, and that they always find connections between these ancient texts and our contemporary life. And it's fun for me to work those connections into liturgy that empowers worshiping communities to speak to and about God in new ways. If you join the Bible Worm Patreon at the Liturgy Worm level or higher, you'll have access to those liturgies and prayers that you can use or adapt, as well as early access to the podcast. Or there are other levels with different benefits, including Bible studies, access to the Bible Worm Collaborative discussion group, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast to help Bobby and Amy continue creating this incredible resource for people of faith around the world. And now back to this week's podcast.
Okay, I am picking up in verse 6. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share in me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason, he said, "Not all of you are clean."
I just love the way you intone like different characters.
I had to really think about that. I was like, I don't know that I did it the right way, but how does Simon Peter say, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?"
Going to wash my feet. Yeah.
And then he's about to say, "You will never wash my feet."
I'm teaching a class right now in the Gospel of Mark. And one of the first activities I had them do was watch this one-man performance of the Gospel of Mark. Like he just tells the story word for word. But he's like a storyteller who's like telling you the story dramatically, which is probably how people would have received at least Mark's gospel in the first century. And they were like, "Oh, he's doing too much leading of us with the way he says stuff." And I'm like, that's what's interesting, right? Is like, there isn't, like,
you got to make some kind of
tone,
choice, right?
And you're making a choice in your head. You just don't know you are. And so it's so interesting to read with somebody who makes choices and to see how that compares to the choices you would have made.
Do you Is there a different way that you had those voices in your head?
Well, it was verse 6 that got me.
Yeah.
Where you were like, "Are you going to wash my feet?" Like,
yeah, maybe that came out a little weird. I don't know.
Mine was, "Are you going to wash my feet?" Like, like a little bit of like upset or offended.
Yeah.
Yours was like resigned, like, "Oh no, I see what you're up to."
Mine was sort of like, "You're not really going to do this, are you?"
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's so interesting.
Yeah, but it can't be this like, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Like, it can't be just
eager.
a curious it can't be eager, and it can't be just curious because he's about to say, "No, you not."
Yeah. He is, yes. Yeah, he already has that "you will never wash my feet" is already in mind when he says whatever he says in verse 6. Like, he is clear that this should not be happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Bobby, the first question I wrote down here already, our conversation must have been helpful to me already because my question, I'm like, I think it's too modern of a question. But what I wrote down for this verse 7, when Jesus says, "You don't understand what I'm doing, but later you'll understand." I was like, is this really so hard to understand? Like, it doesn't seem like you'd have to work that hard to be like, oh, the leader is inverting I don't know. There are a lot of things that Jesus does and says that I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Please walk me through this.
Yeah.
This is not one of them.
Yeah.
This one feels fairly straightforward, but either there's something else coming that I don't know, and so then the joke's on me, or we're really in a different world where it is just incomprehensible that this elevated, honored teacher, Messiah would ever do something. Like, it's just, it's impossible to fathom.
Yeah. You've put your finger on something super important there, Amy. I appreciate that so much. Because in a sense, we are in another world, right? We're in an honor-shame culture where every social interaction is very clear. Who is the more important person in this social interaction, and preserving those kinds of like where you fit in the hierarchy is just the way of things. And in the Roman context, like every person had a patron who took care of them and they gave honor to, and sort of that relationship all the way up. And to the extent that they figured out Jesus is the Christ, like he is maybe the patron of all patrons, and like on par with the emperor. And so if you imagine that, like the emperor walks in or something like that and is like, "Hey, I'm going to wash your feet." Like, it is kind of a mind-blowing idea. So I do think we're in a different world, and the scale of it, right? It's not just like somebody who's mildly more important than you, but like the sovereign of the universe kind of idea is going to wash your feet.
Yeah.
But, Amy, this other idea of whenever anybody says, "You don't understand now, but you will later," in the Gospel of John, it is always talking about the crucifixion and the resurrection. Yeah. And so at some level, what this is doing is helping us think about what the crucifixion is. And so I actually think this is working in the opposite direction. Like what Jesus says is the crucifixion is going to help you understand what's happening right now. But the way I process it is what's happening right now is going to help you understand the crucifixion. Like, if you think it's hard to accept that I'm going to wash your feet, imagine how hard it's going to be for you to accept that I'm going to go to the cross for you. And so it's sort of preparing him, like this thing that maybe he actually can get his head around, as you're saying, gives him a toehold in this other thing that is kind of really mind-blowing.
Wow. That really just kind of blew it up for me. And also toehold, we're washing feet.
That was unintentional. I am most hilarious when I'm trying not to be.
Whatever, Mortimer. Okay. This statement of Jesus, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me."
Yeah.
That is a strong statement.
Yeah.
What does he mean by share with me? Is it like this willingness to overturn those authorities, to participate in this overturning of the authority structures? Or is something happening like almost like ontologically in this ritual, like a baptism thing or a communion thing in the future? Like, how do you read this? How do you read that statement?
There are kind of a couple of different ways of getting into what is happening right here. This verse and then the next few verses, which are also kind of hard to understand.
Yeah.
One way of getting at it is that this is about accepting the sacrificial atonement of Jesus. Like, unless you believe, you're sort of left out. And there's a whole line of thinking that goes in that direction, by which I am completely unpersuaded. I don't find it helpful or useful. What I find more helpful, and here I'm following Gail O'Day, who's following Rudolf Bultmann, that what's really happening here is Jesus is saying, we've seen this developing all along, like people who are healed but don't understand don't actually attach themselves to Jesus, like that guy in chapter 5, versus people who are healed and then end up realizing what Jesus is up to, like the man born blind in chapter 9. We've seen this kind of in its own little ways, but I think what Jesus is saying here is all the way back to, look, there's two ways that the world can work. It's the imperial hierarchy way, and there's the kingdom of heaven service way. Like, we're all equal, and the most important is the least important. And if you don't get that, you don't get it. Like, if you can't get what I'm doing over here is a whole different way of structuring reality, then you really have not understood the kingdom of heaven. You've not been born again from above. You just you have not made it over here yet. And so the kind of the test is, can you accept that in this kingdom of heaven way of framing things, the sovereign of the universe is going to wash your feet? If you can't let that be what it is, then you haven't made it yet. And I don't think it's judgy, like, get yourself out of here. Like, I think Jesus wants him to get it.
Yeah.
But if you're still thinking hierarchy, you haven't got it yet. That's where I come out.
That helps me so much with the rest of the paragraph, because then I can see how Peter, maybe like me, doesn't understand what he's saying. Like, he thinks this is some kind of like ritual cleansing that he needs to undergo. And so he's like, great, clean whatever you got to do. That's fine.
Yeah.
And then we get Jesus's response, where I guess when he says one who has bathed does not have to wash, do you think he's talking about baptism, or am I getting too like literal here? And
that is a reading that has a very old and long history, like from Tertullian forward.
Yeah.
So you're in very good company.
I'm in good company, but that's not your reading.
That is not where I want to go with it.
Yeah.
There is a whole reading here. Well, I mean, you helped me just be a little clearer about this other kind of reading, is that the foot washing is about cleansing, right? And so that we are dirty in some way and we need to be cleansed. And so this foot washing cleanses us in the way that the sacrificial atonement cleanses us. In my reading, following O'Day, following Bultmann, it's not about cleansing at all. It's about hospitality and social hierarchy inversion. Cleansing has nothing to do with it. And so what Jesus is saying here is, you're already clean, like that's fine. But what you need to learn to do here is to allow yourself to be served by the most important person, not just in the room, but in the universe, and understand that that is the way of things. So I'm kind of dismissing the whole, this has anything at all to do with cleansing.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get what you're saying.
But there are people who read it the way that cleansing, baptism, sacrificial atonement, there are certainly people who read it that way.
Yeah. And this statement that he makes, and you are clean, though not all of you. There's a little note in my study Bible that's helpful to me, who is not looking at the Greek. This is the plural you. Yeah. So he's not saying you yourself are mostly clean.
Right. Yeah.
He's saying y'all are fine.
Yeah. Mostly.
Some of you are not.
Yeah. In Arkansas, we would say y'all are clean, but not all y'all.
Yeah. I can't imagine Peter actually picked up all that Jesus was laying down there.
No, I don't think he did. Which is, kind of back to what we were saying before. Like, you're not going to understand this
You're
right
not
now.
going to
but
understand it right now.
You're going to understand it later. And whether he understands it later or not, I don't know.
Okay, I have one more question, then we're going to go on. Do you think he washed Judas's feet also?
I do think he did.
It's funny that it doesn't narrate that. That seems like it'd be very, I don't know.
Yeah, to me, that's one of the most interesting things. And it's true in all of these gospels in their own way. Like, here it's that Jesus washes Judas's feet. In the other gospels, it seems to be that Jesus serves the Last Supper to Judas, breaks bread with Judas.
Mm.
And so there is this sort of consistent sort of offering on Jesus's part. And, this is that sort of like receive the healing, but don't understand what has happened. Like, Judas receives the washing, but is not able to make the move of like understanding or accepting what is happening to him, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's not the fact of washing that makes you clean. It's the fact of accepting the significance of the washing.
Yeah.
It is also interesting, like, if you read this as the devil had already made up his own mind that Judas was going to be the one, it may or may not be the case that Judas actually knows he's the one just yet. I don't want to read too far into that because it's not.
And it's
there in the
making me wonder
narrative.
about like what kinds of apocryphal readings there might be that tell the story from Judas's perspective. But that is not our text today. So we can talk about that another time. All right. Are you ready for the last section?
I am.
I'm picking up in verse 12. After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." So I see this section sort of falling maybe into two parts. There's this first part that's like, if I, the Lord and teacher, am going to do this for you, it should provide for you an example that the way that we think about sort of hierarchy doesn't hold, right? Like, it's not, if even I will do this, then that should be a powerful example for you that you also need to do this.
Yes.
This totally makes sense to me, although it feels like it flattens it a little bit for me, like it was this expression of love and intimacy and honoring bodies, even as Jesus is about to leave his body. It's like a very human act. But then, I was talking in the beginning about what feels sort of human and warm and relational and connected, and then what feels like sort of theological and principled and like you're making a point.
Yeah.
And so like now when he sums it up in this sort of like teacherly way, I don't know, I feel like some of those other elements of it get like smushed to me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Do you feel any of that tension?
I think I do as you're saying it. I'm not sure that I would have named that for myself. And I mean, so what we have is this sort of enacted practice of Jesus that's then abstracted into theological principle. That's what you're feeling a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I think the idea is that then you take the abstracted theological principle and you embody it in tangible ways in your own relationships. And we don't get that move, right? We are invited to that move, but we don't get it here. So it's only when we actually like try to do this ourselves and we enact it this way in the relationships that we have that we sort of get back to that more intimate, personal, human sense of it. I don't know how to get from the one to the other without the abstraction in between, I guess.
I know, like I really sat with this for a while, and the closest connection I could sort of get to was in parenting and the kind of the way that we express love in physical care and tenderness for our children that they sometimes interpret as we are their servants.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they start demanding things from that.
Yes.
And in my head, I am genuinely loving them and also showing them how to love.
Yes.
And in their head, sometimes they are understanding this as I should be served.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess there just is a tension when you are in a position of authority over someone, and your job is to love them, but also to teach them how to be in the world.
Yeah.
Even if it like ruins my beautiful poetic whatever image, otherwise, I don't know. That's the best example I came up with.
I love that example. The way you're talking about that really, I think, especially helps me make sense of verse 16. Servants aren't greater than their masters.
Yes.
And that's exactly like, because I'm loving you doesn't suddenly mean now I work for you, right? Like, which is, I mean, it really is that way with kids sometimes. And so my example was, I do a lot of things for me are about the dog whisperer. Do you remember that guy?
Yeah.
Cesar. What was that guy's name?
Yes.
From I was listening to his stuff like 15 years ago when I had my first dog, but a lot of my both teaching and parenting philosophy comes from the dog whisperer. But like somebody in the room is going to be the alpha. Like that's how kind of dog mind works. And so if I'm positioning myself as less important than you, then the dog's going to suddenly think it's the alpha. And this like a less poetic version of the same thing that you're saying. But when you've been trained as a human in this hierarchical way of thinking, and that's the only way you can think about it, then when Jesus lowers himself, then now you're like, oh, well, I'm more important than you. And he is saying, in fact, you're not more important than me. But I'm trying to teach you something here about egalitarian, communal
care
love,
for each other.
For each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. There's got to be the lesson. Like we are so hierarchicalized that we can't just get there without Jesus explicitly saying, here is the point. Do this for each other. It is not that you are now the most important person in the room.
It's so interesting that my thinking helped you understand that verse, because that verse was still hard for me. Verse 16? Yeah. Like when it says, very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master. I was like, whoa. I thought we were talking about master not being greater than servants.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. If we put it in terms of, it's actually really helpful for me to
my
think
friend
about
Amy
the
taught me
dog
that.
whisperer. Someone's going to be the alpha.
Yeah.
And at least on that show, they would say, like, it can be stressful for the dog to be the alpha. Like, the dog is perfectly happy with you being the alpha. If the hierarchy has to exist in some way, much better for it to exist in this way than in the sort of the empire's logic. Is that the way you would think about it?
I think so. I'm wrestling a little bit with like, what does this mean for human communities?
Yeah.
Like, I think the ideal is that there's not an alpha.
Yeah.
Although I think in this case, Jesus is clearly, I mean, he's the most important person in the room, but what he's embodying is the most important person in the room is lowering himself to serve the others. And so what I think is what my friend Amy told me, which is this is a warning against now, because you are being served, now you think you are the alpha. It's just saying we are all in this thing together. And it's really trying just to like keep it sort of flat and level. Now, logically, then I'm like, yeah, but you're like the word that was in the beginning. Like, surely you are higher than me. But that's exactly what Peter was saying a few verses ago.
Right.
And Jesus was like, no, that's not. I think this is trying to get rid of alphas.
I think it's trying to get rid of alphas and also attune us to the heavens. And so it's complicated here that Jesus is like kind of both.
Yeah. I mean, one of the ways that this not this passage, but interpretations of this passage are sometimes critiqued, is something along the following lines. This passage assumes that people are hierarchical thinkers, and that people who think themselves most important in the room need to learn that they're not the most important in the room and they need to serve others. And that's kind of the takeaway. One of the critiques of that line of interpretation is that there are people who never think of themselves as the most important person in the room. And is that really the most helpful lesson for them? That they should submit themselves? Because that's either what they do or what they are told to do kind of all the time. So do you have a way of thinking about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that question is so real and alive across the, readings of ancient Jewish and Christian texts. I don't know what was going on in those times, but it seems like there was not attention to some of those questions in a way that I wish that there had been.
Yeah.
The best way that I come about it is from this Jewish way of thinking about humility that we've talked about before, but I think it's been a long time. The word is anava, and it was a Jewish thinker named Maimonides in the Middle Ages who really talked about it in this particular way. It's translated as humility, but what it means is like taking up the right amount of space, like being a solid and dignified presence, but not pushing other people's presence to the corners and to the margins. And so for some people, a practice of humility in this way of thinking about it will be like seeking out that sense of dignity in a space and not sort of shrinking into the corner and not always moving out of the way of the more powerful person. And for some people, it will be, sort of tightening your belt a little bit and getting out of the way so someone else has more. It's like a sort of take space, make space kind of way of thinking about it. Because you're right, like it is certainly true that not everybody needs to be told. What you actually need to do is get down on the floor and wash people's feet with your clothing.
Yeah.
Because that is not what's missing in their lives.
I appreciate that so much, Amy. There's two sort of instructions in this text. The one that we tend to gravitate toward is do for each other what I have done for you, which is to get down on the floor and wash each other's feet. But the first lesson in this text is Peter, who that's exactly what he wants to do. And Jesus says, no, you cannot wash my feet. I'm going to wash your feet. And there's a sense in which what he's doing for Peter is saying, you think you're not important, but I want you to feel your importance.
Yeah.
And then we get that second instruction.
Yeah.
And so I do think there is an opening here, but it is often missed for exactly what you're saying about taking up the right amount of space in the room. And some of us need to learn the lesson of Peter, which is we have more value than we think we have.
Yeah.
And some of us need to learn the other lesson, which is we need to stoop and lift up someone that is not societally not as important as us. And maybe we kind of cycle around in there somehow. Like sometimes we're in the one position, sometimes in the other.
I think that's exactly right. It's not, most people are not static in one position or the other. It depends on the context that you're in.
Right.
That's a really helpful message directly from this text, Bobby. Bobby, this was a big text.
Yeah.
How is it speaking to you at this particular moment?
You're right. This is such a huge text, and it comes at such a key moment in the Gospel of John. And at some level, like, this is what Jesus has been trying to get people to understand. And this is the thing that's going to help you understand what the heck the crucifixion is about. So just theologically speaking, for me, this is not about being cleansed so that you are acceptable to Jesus. This is exactly about this sort of kingdom of heaven is about the inversion of social hierarchies and this mutual uplift and valuing of one another and letting yourself be lifted up and also lowering down as we were just talking about. The question of how, like, first of all, that's just a radically different way of thinking than like If you think about the way our society is often structured, you can see pockets of places where people do have this kind of communal, egalitarian, mutual uplift. But mostly we tend to work just like the Roman Empire did in terms of who are the most powerful and moneyed people and what is my proper place in the line. So thinking about how do you live that out in the world is not an easy question. The closest that I have ever come is my old community of people who are mostly homeless and a few people who are housed at Mercy Community Church, and now the community I'm part of at Canvas Community, which is a lot of people who are homeless or have been homeless, and then people like me who come in housed and from like quote unquote respectable professions and positions in the world. And one of the phrases I learned from my friend Chad Hyatt, who started the original Mercy Church in Atlanta, was dare to use the language of we, which is instead of separating like I'm a volunteer and you are a person in need, or I'm a this and you're a that, it's we are a community and we are all in this thing together. And just that little adjustment, which I have been trying to do for 10 years now, makes such a difference in thinking about how we belong to each other and how we can create something together. For somebody like me, my first starting point is Jesus's instruction, which is do to each other as I have done to you, which is get off your high horse and lift somebody else up. That has been a focal point for me and something I spend kind of a lot of time thinking about and trying to live out, sometimes better than others. But I think where we landed there at the end about not everybody inhabits the world in that way, but there are people who exactly need to learn or experience or feel valued and lifted up. And that part of what we can do in a community is to find ways of providing that for people and offering that to people. Even just like I was having a conversation at Canvas Community earlier this week about how we do Bible study there, which is very much the way you and I do Bible study, but it's with a homeless crowd of like 20 people. And one of the things I was saying is for somebody living on the street, just the very fact of somebody asking them a question about the Bible and them giving their answer and then having their answer taken seriously, like that is itself like a very small expression of what Jesus is talking about here. So I don't know that I have a profound world-changing takeaway from this passage, but I think my takeaway is just finding ways in the world to convince people that they matter and that they are valued, and not to take ourselves overly seriously if that's the way we are inclined, and to learn to find value, receive value from others if that's the way we are inclined. And if we all lift each other up in this way, like the ideal here is a community of mutual uplift in which I lift you up and you lift me up. And like, if you could achieve that, that would be the most beautiful thing in the world. And that's, I think, what Jesus is holding out here as the ideal of the kingdom of heaven, is that we're all just lifting each other up all the time.
I love that. I love it.
What about you, Amy? What are you taking away from this text?
For some reason, I have been really drawn into just sort of, I don't know, thinking about foot washing and maybe the potential, maybe it's metaphorical resonances of it. I don't know. I've been thinking about, first of all, like your feet are, as we said, they're going to be very dirty. You're just, walking around outside. They're going to be very calloused. They also are like phenomenal machines that have so many nerve endings in them and so many complex muscles to try to keep you balanced and to sense what's on the ground beneath you, but not sense it too strongly because, that's what you need the calluses for. You need to be able to move forward. And I don't know, the more that I sort of thought about that as like, this is the the location of our connection, our grounding here on earth. If we imagine ourselves to be creatures that are partially inhabiting earth and partially with our minds and spirits in the heavens, it's the earth part that is being sort of wiped clean here and cared for. And maybe in some ways that's like a metaphorical doorway into something not so different than what you were saying. But what are the ways that we can sort of help, soften each other or keep each other open and healthy in our ways of connecting to what is happening right here around us, even as this incredibly profound thing is about to happen in the gospel that might make you just think, well, forget earth. Like, we're in the heavens now. We're just waiting for the clouds to open up. But it's feeling to me like an invitation to pay attention to our connection to what is happening right here around us and to nurture other people's connection and attentiveness to what is happening right here around us as a way to, as you have said before, sort of live in the kingdom even while we are here on earth in our bodies with our feet.
I love that, Amy. And I think at the end of the day, that's simply put, what Jesus is trying to do right here is to show his disciples what it means to live in the kingdom of heaven right here and right now. And this is the entry point.
Bobby, next time, as you said, we're really getting into an intense period here. We're skipping ahead to chapter 18 and reading Peter's denial.
This narrative lectionary in John lingers in the story of the last night of Jesus' life leading up to the crucifixion for 4 weeks. And so some other gospels, we feel like we never really get to talk about it. Yeah. This year, we're going to linger
this year
over
we
it.
do. Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks for this conversation, Bobby. A lot to think about.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I'll see you next time.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us to keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all our Patreon supporters for helping us make this podcast possible.
Join us again next time when we continue on with John chapter 18, verses 12 through 27, the story of Peter's denial. Until then, keep on digging.